all the meanings of Yuval Noah Harari's book, Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. Imagine you hop into a time machine and embark on a 300,000-year journey, from the first Homo sapiens to today, with all its artificial intelligence and space dreams. That's exactly what Yuval Noah Harari offers in his book, Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. This isn't just a boring history textbook. It's a captivating story of how we, ordinary primates, became the masters of the planet. Harari wrote Sapiens based on a lecture series for students, then reworked it into a book in quiet solitude. He meditates 2 hours a day, which helps him find clarity in his thoughts. So, this is not only a history of humanity, but also the fruit of deep reflection. Reading this book will help you understand where we came from and why we live the way we do. It will also offer insights into where we might be headed. Harari, an Israeli historian and professor, wrote the book to answer the question, what makes us human? And why did our history unfold this way? Part 1, The Cognitive Revolution. Chapter 1, The Accidental Link in the Chain. This chapter discusses how Homo sapiens emerged among other human species and why we ultimately came to dominate. Harari explains that we weren't inherently special, we were just one of many primates. Evolution didn't prepare us for greatness. Homo sapiens was just one species of human, like Neanderthals or Denisovans, and our success wasn't predetermined. Random mutations and circumstances played a key role. Our bodies are imperfect results of evolution. We inherited weak physical attributes from our ancestors, but survived thanks to a brain that developed accidentally, not according to some grand plan. Differences between human species were significant. Neanderthals, for example, had larger brains than us, but we triumphed due to our social skills and adaptability. The idea of sapiens' accidental success helps explain why, in business or career, the strongest or smartest don't always win. Often, the one who adapts better triumphs. For instance, a startup can overtake a giant like Nokia simply by catching a trend, as Apple did with the iPhone. This chapter shows that our success isn't destiny, but a confluence of circumstances, and it makes you wonder how much chance still influences our lives. Chapter 2, The Tree of Knowledge. Here, Harari explains how the cognitive revolution, a leap in brain development around 70,000 years ago, allowed sapiens to create complex languages and imagined ideas, which became our main advantage. The sapiens language became a tool for transmitting complex ideas. Unlike animals who communicate only about the real food, danger, we learned to talk about things that don't exist, like legends or future plans. The ability to believe in fiction changed everything. People began to unite around common stories, myths, gods, tribal traditions, which gave us the power to coordinate large groups. The cognitive revolution made us flexible. We could quickly adapt new conditions by devising explanations and strategies, while other species remained bound by instincts. The idea of fiction works in marketing. Brands like Coca-Cola don't just sell soda. They sell a story about happiness in a bottle, and millions believe in it, buying the product. This chapter reveals how language and imagination made us unique, showing that the power of sapiens isn't in muscles, but in the stories we tell. Chapter 3, A Day in the Life of Adam and Eve. Harari describes the daily life of hunter-gatherers, our ancestors, and debunks myths that their existence was primitive or unhappy. Hunter-gatherers lived better than we think. They worked less, 3 to 6 hours a day, ate a varied diet, and were healthier than farmers because they weren't dependent on a single crop. Social connections were key to survival. Small groups, up to 150 people, stuck together through trust and mutual aid, not strict laws or chiefs. Their world was full of knowledge about nature. Gatherers knew everything about plants, animals, and weather, allowing them to survive without technology, relying on experience and intuition. The idea of the simple life of gatherers inspires modern trends like minimalism. People give up excess possessions and stress to live easier, like our ancestors. This chapter forces a reevaluation of the primitiveness of the past, and an appreciation for the balance hunter-gatherers had. Perhaps we lost more than we gained. Chapter 4, The Flood. Harari recounts how sapiens spread across the planet, wiping out other human and animal species. This was the first flood, a wave of destruction caused by our expansion. we caused massive extinctions. When sapiens arrived in Australia 45,000 years ago, giant kangaroos and other animals disappeared, not due to climate, but due to hunting and the fires we set. Other human species lost out to us in competition. Neanderthals and Denisovans either died out or interbred with us because we were better organized and more aggressive in seizing territory. Our ability to adapt destroyed ecosystems. As we adjusted to new lands, we didn't just survive. We reshaped everything to suit ourselves, leaving a wasteland behind. The idea of sapiens' destructive impact is evident in ecology. Deforesting for fields or cities repeats the same scenario as thousands of years ago, only now with bulldozers instead of spears. This chapter shows that our success has always gone hand in hand with destruction, and it makes you ponder the cost of our dominance. Overall conclusion for part 1, the cognitive revolution. The first part of the book reveals how Homo sapiens transformed from an ordinary primate into the master of the planet, thanks to accidental evolutionary gifts, a developed brain, language, and imagination. Harari emphasizes that our success was not inevitable. We lived simply but effectively as hunter-gatherers, and then began to change the world, often destroying everything in our path. This is a story of how the power of fiction and adaptability made us unique, but even then laid the foundation for future problems, from ecological crises to social inequalities. This part makes you wonder, is our greatness costing us too much? Part 2, the agricultural revolution. Chapter 5, history's biggest hoax. The chapter describes how the shift from hunting and gathering to agriculture around 10,000 years ago became not progress, but a trap that worsened people's lives while increasing their numbers. Agriculture didn't improve life. It made it harder. Hunter-gatherers lived more freely and healthily, while farmers worked more, ate worse, and suffered from diseases due to sedentary life and a meager diet. The agricultural revolution was evolution's hoax. People chose agriculture for stability, but instead became dependent on crops, leading to famine, hierarchies, and wars. Quantity trumped quality of life. Farmers could feed more children than gatherers, and this gave sapiens a numerical advantage, despite deteriorating conditions. The idea of progress as a hoax applies to modern times. We work overtime for stable wages, sacrificing health and freedom, just as farmers did for their harvest. This chapter shows that progress isn't always a blessing, but often a compromise, where we lose more than we gain, and it makes you think about the cost of civilization. Chapter 6, building pyramids. Harari explains how the agricultural revolution gave rise to the first complex societies, where elites used surplus food to create hierarchies, laws, and grandiose projects like pyramids. Surplus food created power. Farmers produced more than needed for survival, allowing elites, priests, kings, to control the masses by demanding taxes and labor. Writing emerged for governance. To keep track of grain reserves and subjects, people invented the first record-keeping systems, from clay tablets in Mesopotamia to hieroglyphs in Egypt. Large-scale projects became symbols of the new order. Pyramids or temples were built not for utility, but to solidify the power of elites and display the grandeur of society. The idea of surplus and power is evident in corporations. Profits, modern surplus, allow bosses to build skyscrapers or fund projects, emphasizing their status. This chapter reveals how the simple invention of agriculture launched a chain of changes that led to the inequality and bureaucracy we've inherited to this day. Chapter 7, memory overload. This section describes how the growth of agrarian societies overwhelmed the human brain, accustomed to living in small groups, and how writing became the solution to this problem. The human brain couldn't cope with large societies. In tribes of up to 150 people, everyone knew each other. But in cities with thousands of inhabitants, memory couldn't retain all the connections and rules. Writing saved social order. Records of taxes, debts, and laws allowed for the management of complex systems, transferring information from the head onto clay or papyrus. Information became more important than intuition. If gatherers relied on experience, farmers and officials relied on documents, which changed people's thinking. The idea of memory overload is visible in the digital age. We use cloud services and databases to store what doesn't fit in our heads. just like ancient scribes did with their tablets. This chapter shows how the agricultural revolution forced us to invent tools for managing complexity, laying the groundwork for modern bureaucracy and technology. Chapter 8. There is no justice in history. Harari discusses how agrarian societies created inequality between men and women, rich and poor, and why this became the norm, though it wasn't inevitable. Inequality grew from arbitrary conditions. Agriculture required strength and control over land, which gave men power over women, and those who seized more resources power over others. Myths solidified injustice. Religions and laws declared hierarchy natural or divine to make the masses accept their place and not rebel. History doesn't care about fairness. Successful societies won not because they were better or kinder, but because they could organize more people and resources. The idea of myths of inequality works in advertising. We're told that expensive cars or clothes represent deserved status, even though it's just marketing. This chapter explains why inequality became part of our lives, and makes you wonder how much of it is truly natural or simply beneficial to the powerful. Overall conclusion for part 2, the agricultural revolution. The second part of the book reveals how the shift to agriculture transformed humanity, turning us from free gatherers into dependent farmers, and then into complex societies with hierarchies and rules. Harari calls this the great hoax. We gained numbers and power, but lost health, freedom, and equality. From surplus food to writing and pyramids, each innovation reinforced elite control and complicated life, laying the foundations for the modern world with its bureaucracy and injustice. This section makes us rethink the cost of progress and ask, was it worth it? Part 3, the unification of humankind. Chapter 9, the arrow of history. The chapter explains how humanity gradually united into larger communities, moving from disparate tribes to global systems, and that this process was irreversible. History has a direction, unification. Thousands of years ago, people lived in isolated groups with different cultures, but trade, wars, and ideas gradually connected them into larger networks. Shared values accelerated the process. When people began to believe in one religion or system, an empire, it created a basis for cooperation between strangers. Differences between cultures faded. Successful societies absorbed or displaced weaker ones, and diversity gave way to uniformity, like an arrow flying in one direction. The idea of unification is evident in globalization. Companies like Amazon operate worldwide, erasing borders, just as Roman roads once connected provinces. This chapter shows that unification is not an accident, but a pattern that made us stronger, but less unique. Chapter 10, the scent of money. Harari recounts how money became a universal tool for unification, allowing people to trust each other and trade, even without knowing each other personally. Money is an imagined value that we believe in. Coins or paper bills are worthless in themselves, but a shared belief in them made trade simpler and larger in scale than bartering. Money unites people through trust. A farmer in China and a merchant in Europe could work together because both recognized gold or silver as an equivalent of labor. The economy became more powerful than cultural differences. Money overcame linguistic and religious barriers, creating a global network where everyone depends on each other. The idea of money as trust works in cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin has no physical form, but people believe in its value and use it worldwide. This chapter reveals how money became the glue of humanity, showing that our strength lies in our ability to agree on fiction. Chapter 11, Imperial Dreams. This section describes how empires unified people through force and ideology, creating vast territories with common rules, and why they were successful despite their cruelty. Empires were built on conquest, but survived through ideas. Rome or Britain subdued peoples with a sword, then offered them roads, laws, and a sense of belonging to something grand. Empires created a unified order. They imposed language, culture, and taxes, which simplified governance and eroded local traditions in favor of a common system. The conquerors themselves changed. Empires adopted the customs of conquered peoples, just as the Romans adopted Greek culture, transforming into hybrids rather than mere tyrants. The idea of imperial order is evident in the EU. Countries unite under common laws and currency, sacrificing some sovereignty for stability. This chapter explains how empires became a tool for unification, showing that power and ideas combined can bind millions of people. Chapter 12, The Law of Religion. Harari explores how religions, from polytheism to monotheism, helped unite people by offering common rules and a meaning for life, especially in large societies. Religion explained the world in order. If agriculture brought chaos and inequality, then gods, or a single god, gave people answers to why things were the way they were, and rules for behavior. Monotheism strengthened unification. Belief in one god, as in Christianity or Islam, connected millions of people through common rituals and morals, more powerfully than local cults. Religions adapted to societal needs. They began as simple beliefs, but evolved into complex systems supporting empires and trade. The idea of religion as a unifier works in team building. Corporate culture, with its mission and values, brings employees together, just as a church unites believers. This chapter shows that religion became the spiritual glue that helped people live together, even if they never saw each other. Chapter 13, The Secret of Success. Harari concludes by explaining why unification through money, empires, and religion worked, and how these tools made humanity invincible. Cooperation is our main ace. Money, empires, and religions allowed millions of people to work together, which other species like Neanderthals couldn't do. Flexibility ensured survival. These systems changed with the needs of the times. Gold gave way to paper, empires to nations, and religions to new ideologies. Success was collective, not individual. No single person could build a pyramid or discover America, but masses believing in a common goal made it possible. The idea of cooperation is evident in open source projects. Thousands of programmers worldwide create software, like Linux, for a common idea, not personal gain. This chapter proves that the secret of our success lies in our ability to unite around imagined ideas, making us unique and powerful. Overall conclusion for part 3, the unification of humankind. The third part of the book reveals how humanity transitioned from scattered tribes to a global society, thanks to 3 tools: money, empires, and religions. Harari shows that these imagined systems, from coins to the Bible, became the glue that connected millions of people, overcoming distances and differences. Unification gave us the power to build cities, conquer continents, and create civilization, but it also erased diversity and imposed uniformity. This part makes us wonder, how much does our success depend on believing in shared illusions, and what will happen if they crumble? Part 4, the scientific revolution. Chapter 14, the discovery of ignorance. The chapter describes how, in the 16th and 17th centuries, people acknowledged their ignorance, which launched the scientific revolution that changed the world through research and discoveries. Acknowledging ignorance was a breakthrough. Before this, Europeans relied on sacred texts, believing all answers were already given, but then they started asking questions and seeking evidence. Science was born from curiosity and doubt. People like Copernicus or Newton didn't accept old truths on faith. They tested them with experience, leading to new knowledge about the universe. Ignorance offered hope for progress. Instead of belief in an unchanging world, the idea emerged that we could improve life through discoveries and inventions. The idea of doubting knowledge is used in startups. Entrepreneurs like Elon Musk don't accept that it's impossible to fly to Mars, and they seek new paths. This chapter shows that admitting our ignorance is not a weakness, but a strength that opened the door to the modern world. Chapter 15, the marriage of science and empire. Harari explains how science and colonial empires joined forces during the Age of Discovery, helping each other conquer the world and amass knowledge. Empires funded science for power. Spain and Britain sent scientists on expeditions to study new lands, and knowledge of maps and plants helped them seize territories. Science justified colonization. Europeans believed they were bringing enlightenment to savages, using discoveries as a tool for moral and military superiority. Conquests accelerated progress. The discovery of America, or Cook's voyages, provided science with new data that translated into technologies from steamboats to cannons. The idea of the alliance between science and power is evident in the space race. The US and USSR spent billions on flights to the moon to prove their greatness. This chapter reveals how science became not just a quest for truth, but also a tool for domination, changing the balance of power in the world. Chapter 16, The Capitalist Creed. This section describes how capitalism grew out of the scientific revolution based on a belief in growth and profit and became the engine of progress. Capitalism believes in endless growth. Unlike the past, where wealth was static, capitalists began investing in the future, expecting that science and trade would bring more. Credit became the fuel of the economy. Banks lent money for risky projects, like Columbus's expeditions, which accelerated the development of technologies and markets. Science and capitalism fueled each other. Companies like the East India Company funded research, and discoveries like the steam engine created new markets. The idea of growth is evident in venture capital. Investors give millions to startups like Tesla, believing they will grow into giants. This chapter explains how belief in progress and profit linked science with money, laying the foundation for our world. Chapter 17, The Cogs of Industry. Harari recounts how the Industrial Revolution of the 19th century transformed scientific ideas into machines, changing production, transportation, and people's lives. Machines replaced human labor. Steam engines and machinery made production mass market, increasing the output of goods from textiles to weapons. Time became more valuable than strength. Industrialization introduced precise schedules and assembly lines, where every second was subject to efficiency, not natural rhythms. Industry changed society. People moved to cities, worked in factories, and the old way of life with farms and crafts became a thing of the past. The idea of efficiency is evident in Amazon. Warehouses with robots and next-day delivery echo the logic of industrial cogs. This chapter shows how science, becoming a machine, accelerated life and reshaped the world, but stripped us of old freedoms. Chapter 18, The Permanent Revolution. Here, Harari describes how the 20th century brought continuous changes, from technology to wars, making stability impossible. Change became the norm. Electricity, airplanes, and computers appeared so rapidly that people couldn't keep up, living in a perpetual race. Wars accelerated progress. The world conflicts of the 20th century gave birth to the atomic bomb and the internet, showing that destruction can be creative. The future became more important than the past. Society began to focus on innovation and youth, rather than traditions and elders. The idea of constant change is evident in IT. Companies like Google update products annually to avoid falling behind. This chapter proves that the scientific revolution made the world dynamic but unstable, forcing us to run without stopping. Chapter 19, And They Lived Happily Ever After. Harari asks whether we've become happier thanks to science, and concludes that progress has improved life but hasn't solved the problem of happiness. Science extended life and comfort. Medicine conquered diseases, and technology provided food and housing, but happiness remained subjective and elusive. Expectations grow faster than achievements. People get used to conveniences and demand more, making satisfaction unattainable. Happiness doesn't depend on progress. Harari compares hunter-gatherers and modern people, showing that inner peace is more important than external benefits. The idea of expectations is evident on social media. New gadgets delight us for a week, and then we wait for the next model. This chapter makes us ponder that progress isn't happiness, but an endless chase for something new. Chapter 20, The End of Homo sapiens. Harari looks to the future, where technologies like genetic engineering and AI could transform us into a new species, or even destroy us. We could become gods. Genetic technologies and artificial intelligence offer a chance to live forever or become smarter. But this would change the very nature of humanity. Inequality will intensify. If superhumans with enhanced bodies are only available to the wealthy, the world will split into castes more severely than ever before. Humanity risks extinction. Harari warns that playing with nature could lead to the creation of beings that displace us, just as we displaced Neanderthals. The idea of human enhancement is evident in biohacking. People are already experimenting with implants and genes for longevity. This chapter warns that the scientific revolution isn't the end of the journey, but the beginning of a dangerous transformation. This is such a wonderful book. I wrote down all the important points from this book, all the techniques and tools, and also made a step-by-step action plan based on the book. You can get all this in my private club, Place of Power. There, you will find a ready-made, detailed text analysis with similar lists for hundreds of best-selling self-help books. Also, only there can you get an exclusive analysis of the newest best-selling books that are currently at the top of Amazon sales charts. Join via the link in the description and enjoy.